This is the 21st show. I'm Brian Mackey. There is one bug on a lot of people's minds right now, and that is cicadas. You may be deafened as you walk out your door today. But for the rest of our show today, we're going to be talking about a much smaller bug. Actually, it's not even a bug. It's a creature, I guess we can say, ticks. They've gotten more common as the years go on, and that's brought with it more of the diseases that ticks can spread to humans and other species. There are more than a dozen species of ticks in Illinois, though people will likely only encounter a few of them. Last month, however, in Morgan County in the western part of the state, another kind of tick was detected here for the first time. And while it's not clear how much of a difference that species will make for humans, the discovery is still raising questions about how people and animals alike can stay safe. Here to talk about what we're learning about ticks and what we're doing about them is Teresa Steckler, an educator and extension specialist in commercial agriculture with the University of Illinois Extension at the Dixon Springs Agricultural Center in Southern Illinois. Teresa, welcome to the 21st show.
Welcome, or thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Appreciate your being here. Also with us is Chris Stone, director of the Medical Entomology Lab, which is part of the Illinois Natural History Survey. Chris, welcome back to the program to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And listeners, you are, of course, welcome to join our conversation. Have you seen more ticks where you are? Maybe you've had a personal noteworthy experience with a tick. How do you keep yourself safe? Let us know by giving us a call at 800-222-9455. That's 800-222-9455. All right, so Chris, I want to start with this new species. It was spotted in Illinois last month. It's called the Asian longhorn tick. What do we know about it?
We know a good bit, and I guess I'll start with the biology, or some of the things that as a biologist I find kind of fascinating about this species. And one thing is that this is a true invasive. And as you mentioned, over the past 2 decades or so, we've seen increases in ticks in general. We've seen certain species sort of expand their range, move further into Illinois from the south, or move further south from Wisconsin and Minnesota. So that's range expansions of ticks that have been here already. This one is a true invasive in the sense that it's originally from East Asia. It's present in places like China, Korea, Japan, and has made its way to Australia, New Zealand, and came into it was first really detected in 2017, but seems like it might have been present a little bit before that already. So this is a true invasive. And one of the, I think, fascinating things about this tick is that it reproduces in a really fascinating way. It can do so asexually. So we only need females. They do require blood, of course, to produce eggs, but they don't require males. And that really makes it, in part, such a successful invader. Just a single female could potentially start off a new population somewhere.
Yeah, 2,000 eggs we read from a single female. Parthogenesis, is that the right term for that? Do I have that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
amazing. And this tick it's particularly small, right? Can you talk about? It seems like it might even be hard to spot.
It's a smallish, sort of nondescript reddish brown tick. The name the longhorn tick is, well, if you put it under a microscope, you will see the horns or spurs on its mouth parts. But it is, a smallish, fairly nondescript tick species.
All right, Teresa, I want to bring you into the conversation. As I understand it, maybe the details are a bit sketchy about the difference the Asian longhorn tick makes in bringing diseases to humans. But what sort of threat do ticks like this pose to livestock?
Very good question. We do know that this particular tick can carry Theileria and the Theileria itself is already present in our cattle, but there's one genotype, the Icada form, that our cattle are not immune to or have no history of experience or so that can cause a huge amount of loss in our cattle. We have seen through the research in Virginia and some other states that once it gets in a herd, it just spreads pretty quickly throughout that herd. You get one infected animal, and multiple tick bites can occur, and the disease can be spread from animal to animal. And it's just not only the tick that can spread the disease. So iatrogenic introduction can occur as well. And it's been estimated we could lose potentially upwards of 25% of our cattle herds just because they are naive to this Icada form of Theileria.
I didn't quite catch that last phrase you used about introduction. What was that again, and what does that mean exactly? Iatrogenic introduction, was that it? Yeah.
Iatrogenic, that basically means reusing needles, reusing palpation sleeves, anything through normal husbandry that could occur that does not get washed in between animals or that has any kind of could have blood on it, could transmit it. Biting mouth parts on some flies has been suspected to transmit the other diseases such as anaplasmosis as well.
Wow. So one tick, and then you could potentially, that's how I guess it spreads so quickly. Chris, how do we tell this sort of tick apart from the other tick species in Illinois?
Good question. Yeah. At least the ones that people are likely to find on themselves. Some of the other species we have here that people might be familiar with, like the Lone Star tick, at least the females have this fairly distinct character of the white dot on them. The American dog tick has these fairly distinct patterns on its back, and black-legged ticks have sort of a unique appearance as well. So this one is, again, different because it's this small, non-distinct reddish-brownish species. To really tell it apart, you really have to put it under the microscope, and it is those two horns or spurs that kind of set it apart from other species in that genus. I would say it's probably challenging for the layperson to see so much of a difference between a lot of those, and it really does require putting them under the microscope and probably having a specialist take a look at them.
Okay. We're going to take a break on the program. We're talking about the discovery of a new species, well, new to Illinois anyway, and what that means for livestock and people. We're also going to talk about staying safe as we get deeper into tick season. We're going to take your calls at 800-222-9455. If you're on the line, we're just going to take a short break. We'll come to the calls as soon as we get back. 800-222-9455. We're talking with Teresa Steckler of the University of Illinois Extension and Chris Stone, director of the Medical Entomology Lab at the Illinois Natural History Survey. More when we return. This is the 21st Show. Stay with us. This is the 21st Show. I'm Brian Mackey. We are talking about ticks in Illinois, how prominent they are as we're getting into tick season, and how people and animals can stay safe against ticks. We're talking about this with Teresa Steckler of the University of Illinois Extension and Chris Stone, director of the Medical Entomology Lab at the Illinois Natural History Survey. You can join our conversation today by giving us a call at 800-222-9455. That's 800-222-9455. And in fact, let's go to the phones now. Michelle is calling from McHenry County on line 4. Michelle, thanks for calling in.
Good morning. I'm wondering what the difference is between a Lyme tick and a wood tick. I went on my patio, not even in the grass, and I ended up with a tick on my arm. It was moving. It didn't attach, but I'm wondering, are there disease in those wood ticks as well?
All right, great question. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. Chris, can you take that?
Yeah. Let me do my best. So, the wood tick, I think that is a sort of common name that's sometimes used for the American dog tick as well. I might be wrong. The common names can be a little bit um, uh, different as to what people refer to them. The tick that transmits Lyme disease, or the pathogen that causes Lyme disease, that is the black-legged or the deer tick, Ixodes scapularis. Certainly in the northern and central part of the state, in the southern part as well, but not as much. You have a good chance of encountering that one. So yeah, different tick species have different pathogens associated with them, and it certainly does help to know the identity of the tick, therefore.
All right, let's talk about, we talked before the break about finding Asian longhorn ticks in Illinois. Chris, how does that new discovery fit into the bigger picture of the changes we've been seeing in tick season in recent years?
So, at least from places like Virginia, where people have studied, where it's been established a little bit longer, and where people have been able to study this in more detail, the longhorn tick, it seems that the seasonality, sort of when the different life stages of this species are active, um, kind of corresponds to the activity patterns with ticks that we've already seen here. So spring, summer for the nymphs and adults, and then maybe going into fall for the larvae. Um, so from my perspective, I think it doesn't necessarily change things all that much. If we look at the tick species that we already have here that we know are of human health concern, like the black-legged tick or the lone star or the dog tick, you're really already looking at um, seasonal activity from early spring through fall, even on warm days in winter. So I don't think it changes that picture that much.
Teresa, when it comes to ticks, whether it's the Asian longhorn tick or another kind, what do farmers need to be on the lookout for?
For all ticks, the best recommendation is go to the herd veterinarian. One, find what product is working as far as the parasicides. Basically, we call them porons in the cattle world. And when the cows are going through the chute, anytime the guys work their livestock, and this works also for sheep and goat producers as well. Ticks will latch onto sheep and goats. Sheep that are woolen, it's very hard to see the ticks because they get down underneath the wool, and unless they have been shorn for the year, you literally have to part the wool and look in the areas, especially around the ears, the brisket, or up underneath the front legs, the flank, or on the sides, underneath in the areas around the tail, underneath the tail that goes down to where the udder would be. Those are the typical areas that you will see a large number of ticks on your livestock.
And let's say you do find a tick. What should a farmer do then?
What I've been recommending to the farmers, if they find them on their livestock, pull those ticks off, put them in a Ziploc bag, put them in the freezer. They can mail them to me, take them to their local extension office. If they suspect that it is the Asian longhorn tick, they can report that to the Illinois Department of Ag. And then, if they're interested in finding out what it was, that they'll provide me with information as far as where the tick was collected, what animal it was collected on, and contact information. Will get the ticks identified and contact them back and let them know what type of tick that was.
And talk about treatment. What can be done for an animal that has been bitten?
For the most part, animals will get bitten by ticks unless they're showing clinical symptoms for like anaplasmosis. Most of the time, some animals might develop an allergy to tick bites. It's quite conceivable that the large number of ticks can cause an allergic reaction. But for the most part, the normal native ticks, the animals are, I shouldn't say accustomed, but I guess accustomed is the only word I can think of at the moment, to having a bite, whether it be a fly or a tick. And the best thing is to treat them with a pour-on to keep the tick. Once the tick bites, then they will die because of the pour-on is in their system.
So, Chris, we've been talking about the threat of tick bites to livestock. What about people? What are some of the dangers to humans from ticks?
From ticks in general?
Yeah, in general. If you want to be more specific, my understanding is the Asian longhorn tick is not thought to be a threat to humans. So I guess maybe take it more broadly.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's still a bit of an open question. I think we probably don't know enough yet about the longhorn tick and what its impact really is going to be in its native range. There are a few pathogens that it's been associated with, but it is still a big question whether it will be a public health concern in the United States. So in general, of course, Lyme disease is something most listeners will be aware of, and that is a really big concern. So, like I said, associated with the black-legged tick. There are a number of other diseases also associated with that tick, like anaplasmosis or babesiosis. And then, of course, we have a number of other diseases that are in this group called the spotted fever group, rickettsiosis, and that might include things like Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is very serious, but luckily quite rare. It seems to be, and we've noticed this other species, the Gulf Coast tick, that has a different Rickettsia parkeri associated with it, that has some overlap in symptoms. And then another symptom or syndrome that is gaining, sort of becoming a bigger issue, I think, is this alpha-gal syndrome, the red meat allergy, and that seems in the United States to be associated with the bite of the Lone Star tick. And interestingly, there is some evidence that suggests in Korea and Japan that the Asian longhorn tick is also implicated in alpha-gal.
How concerned about this should we be? I guess, maybe I'm just way behind the times here. When I think about New England, the East Coast, ticks seem very much a part of life there. People are used to, even finding them in their houses, and just being very on guard for that all the time. Should we be adopting that attitude in the Midwest? Is that in our future? Is it already here? How do you think about that?
I think that would be the safe thing to do from a risk perspective, given how serious and how unpleasant these diseases can be. Certainly, being aware of ticks, having that in mind when you go outdoors. In terms of incidence or the number of cases, we still trail some of those very high incidence states, like in the Northeast, as you mentioned, or Wisconsin and Minnesota. But it has been increasing quite drastically, and it wouldn't surprise me if that increase continues, and if this will continue to become a bigger problem into the future. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, given how serious some of these conditions can be, I think it certainly makes a good idea for people to take precautions and be aware of this.
We had another caller not going on air. The connection was a little spotty, but this was another Michelle, this one calling from Indiana. Wanted to know if there was any reliable research around tick bites causing strokes or heart attacks, especially among elderly folks. Said her husband had a stroke after a tick bite. Chris, can you speak to that?
I can't actually. I don't actually know that no, I'm not sure I actually know if there is a good link there or not. It's not something I've heard of.
Okay, well, that's an answer in and of itself. Teresa, what do we still have to learn about ticks? What are you going to be looking for as this, continues to be something we're monitoring into the future?
One of the things that I'm am interested in is, one, getting the word out to the livestock producers, also the pet owners in the state of Illinois, to just be aware, take precautions, and be proactive for their pets and their livestock. If one of the recommendations has been, if you have a large number of ticks in an area, keep your pastures mowed, keep your cattle or livestock out of the wooded areas so that they're less likely to pick up the ticks. So we're just trying to get the word out. We're trying to be proactive, and we just want people to be safe and be able to go outside and enjoy the world, but realize that there could be, they have to just be proactive, I guess.
And Chris, probably final question to you. What are you watching for with the, the study of ticks as we progress into the future?
Yeah, we've been looking at them for a few years now, and I think it is such a complex, interesting ecological system that as we start getting more data and start filling in the pictures, I think getting to some of those questions about how are they responding to climate or environmental changes, I'm hoping we'll be able to get to a solid enough data set that we can start answering questions related to that.
Seems like every science story is a climate story these days. Chris Stone is director of the Medical Entomology Lab at the Illinois Natural History Survey. Teresa Steckler is with the University of Illinois Extension. Thank you both so much for sharing your time and knowledge with us today on the 21st Show.
Thank you for the opportunity.
That is all the time we have for our program today. Coming up tomorrow, it's our Friday News Roundups. We're going to look at efforts to address mental health in northern Illinois. We're going to talk about a pause in the Postal Service consolidation we've talked about happening in many parts of downstate Illinois. And the Illinois General Assembly is working through some final sticking points as it comes to the end of its session, trying to pass a state budget, among other things. We're also going to have a preview of summer concert season here in Illinois with a music writer for the Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader, among other publications. That is all coming up tomorrow on the 21st Show. Before we go, I want to urge you to join our texting group. You put the public in public radio. We love sharing your comments and questions on the show. You can join by sending the word TALK to 217-803-0730, 217-803-0730. We always appreciate hearing from you about our programs and your suggestions for future guests or stories. You can email us, talk@21stshow.org. You can also reach out to us on Twitter at 21st Show, at 21ST Show, and we're going to be getting on to Threads pretty soon. We are also 21st Show there, 21ST Show. The 21st Show is produced by Christine Hatfield and Jose Zepeda. Our digital producer is Damien Contreras. Technical direction and engineering comes from Steve Mork and Jason Croft. Reginald Hardwick is our news director. The 21st Show is a production of Illinois Public Media. I'm Brian Mackey. Thanks for listening. We will talk with you again tomorrow.